Hi guys, so today's video is going to be slightly different. Um, it's still going to be a work video, but it's going to be a little different because I'm going to be focusing solely on one job, because it is the epitome of Asperger's in the workplace, as far as I'm concerned. And so this won't be as long as the previous two or the next one. So that's a benefit for the viewers, I guess. I just felt it was a good idea to really delve into this one workplace. So I talked about how I worked as basically a daycare supply teacher, and that went from fall of 2014 to summer of 2015, about 10 months. And then I got hired at the end of August 2015. I got hired by one daycare that I went to quite frequently. Apparently, this supervisor would actually request me from the agency. So I got hired. I explained, that everything was going well with the agency and I lived in my own apartment. And I explained all that. And the reason I decided to apply for the job when I heard of it was because of the hours. The hours were 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Usually in childcare, you're working either an 8-hour shift or you're doing before and after school, where you have to be there at the crack of dawn and you have the whole day empty. And we talked about how I was by this point having issues with fatigue. I couldn't do a 40-hour week. I had a very hard time getting up in the morning, so crack of dawn, was hard when I had early shifts. So when I saw these hours, I'm like, I'm applying. This doesn't happen in most childcare centers. The reason it was this way in this childcare center, it's quite a big center. I guess I don't know. I've seen other big centers, but some of them actually hire floaters specifically for covering lunches and stuff. At this center, the kindergarten and school age staff who were only there before and after, they still come in. They would come in at 1 p.m. I think some of them were actually there 12 to 6 because we were helping to cover the lunches in the preschool room. So from 1 to 2, I was in a preschool room. The kids were napping, so I'd be like cleaning toys, whatever needed doing. And then I had a break for half an hour. And then 2:30 to 3:30 was sort of programming meeting time, prep time, whatever you want to call it. And then we were with the kids from 3:30 to 6. So it was a 5-hour day instead of 8 hours, which for me is a big deal. I didn't start till 1, so I could sleep till 10:30, 11 if I wanted to. And by that point, I'd built up the confidence. I believed I could work as an ECE. I could, have a room. And I wasn't going to be alone. Each room had an ECE and an assistant. And the assistant was very, very experienced in done her job many years. So it was kind of de facto. She was more running the thing than I was. So I felt everything would go fine. One thing that's very unique. This school was some sort of experiment from the 70s where they were trying to this open concept classroom. So in between there was four classrooms, four, in the lower level of the school. It's kind of almost the school was built into a hill. So the front door. So even how do I explain it? So this level I was on was a level down from the front door on this side, but you could go out the back door and be right outside on pavement. So back split like a house, I guess. And these four classrooms in the lower half, all they had between them, well, there was a bit of a stagger in the layout, so a couple of the classrooms were less visible from my end, but between the four classrooms were literally like a half brick wall, right? So you could see and hear everything. Some of the teachers had a lot of cabinets lined up, but you could hear everything going on in the other rooms, and so you would think I would have taken one look at that and run the other way, thinking this is a sensory nightmare. But I'd worked there before as a supply, and it was only, 2.5 hours in that room. So I thought I can do this. Um, so I got hired, and we had a day for about a week each summer. The center's closed down. They do like a deep cleaning, reorganize the rooms if they want, have staff meetings and training. And I was down with the school age staff. The kindergarten and preschool staff were on the upper level of the building, so it was just me and the other school age. And I disclosed to them that I have Asperger's syndrome. The supervisor already knew. I thought they work in childcare. ASD is common. I thought by disclosing, I thought, okay, good enough. Um, they will understand what that means. And it became evident within about 5 minutes, I think, looking back on it, that they didn't. They gave me some, it's called MacTac. I don't know if maybe other countries call it different, but it's kind of like sticky, clear sheets. Some people use it as shelf paper. They asked me to put it on some, what you call, not bulletin board, big sort of poster boards, project boards. They asked me to cover these in MacTac so that it would be a slick surface that they could easily add and remove things instead of putting it right on the paper. Yeah, that's too finicky for me. My motor skills are like a child. I was leaving bubbles in it, I couldn't get it on straight, and they weren't getting what the problem was, or at least the person who asked me to do that task. So, sorry. So, looking back, I should have realized from the start that they weren't really getting it. But I didn't. And it started out very well. My supervisor initially did not ask me to contribute to the programming, although this was not made completely clear to me. I was very confused when I saw the schedule, the staff schedule, and all the other school age staff had, a couple times a week where they had personal programming time. Literally sit and think of activities and write out activities separate from the group meeting time. And I remember being very confused, not seeing myself on the schedule. But I figured out pretty quickly that I wasn't initially required to. And so I think that I don't know what that gibberish was. So yeah, so initially I wasn't required to do programming, and so it wasn't that much different from being a supply, except that I was in the same place every day. I knew people's names, but I knew what was expected of me. I didn't have to take my work home with me. I would just show up and do my job. Um, and after a while, they started asking me to do small amounts of the program. Right? There's like a sheet, this week's program, and then there's different categories: sensory activity, motor, gross motor play, whatever. And you have to have an activity for each day of the week under each section. And I started getting asked to do more sections. I actually started enjoying it. I was participating in the staff meetings. I felt like an adult. I felt like everything was going really well for the first little while. I would say late October. I started with the beginning of the school year in like beginning September, and by late October I was already starting to feel stressed and unhappy. I was starting to have some mood swings. Um, And I think what was happening was as I'd been there, as I was settling in, they were expecting me to do more. They were asking me, like, another thing unusual about this program is that not all the school age staff were there right till 6. Some of them started at 9 in the morning, worked another in preschool, and left at 5. So we had to close down some of the rooms and combine the kids into other rooms as the day progressed, and nobody could seem to give me a straight answer on what time I was supposed to close the room. I had one guy telling me at this time, tell the kids to clean up. And then another day I had the kids in the next room, and then everyone was like, why are the kids in the next room? And I just felt like no one was communicating well with me what they wanted. And that was sort of the beginning of the end. Um, and stuff kept happening like that, where things weren't being communicated to me clearly. Like there was an incident where the kids were baking cookies. And generally, when they made cookies, only the kids that participated in the activity got to eat them. Maybe this video won't be so short. Anyway, I was doing these cookies, and nobody told me that because it was the weekend of Thanksgiving, because it was a holiday, I was supposed to make enough cookies for all the kids in school age. No one told me this. So then, after the fact, when there was nowhere near enough cookies, everyone got really annoyed with me. They were running around to see if any other rooms had extra cookies. Um, and that was, like nobody was communicating things to me clearly. People would spring things on me. And in that center, they gave a lot of holiday days. And I feel like there's something on the lens. I would always get stressed out when the supervisor would put up the staff calendar for that month because it felt like we had a big staff as well. It felt like there was always someone away, someone being rotated downstairs. Sometimes a virus would go around and a lot of staff would be away. And at the beginning of the school year, it wasn't so bad, but as the months dragged on, there were days with like half the school age staff, like 4 out of 7 people, were supplies. And I don't like changing my routine. I found that very stressful. And I also started having social issues with the staff. I can do small talk. Um, you can hang out with me and have lunch with me, and I can do small talk. But the more I get to know you and the more I have to interact with you, the harder it can get for me, and I can slip up. And people don't call me out on things, so I don't know I'm slipping up. And then people were going to the supervisor. Somebody said I posted something negative about work on Facebook. One guy said I was bringing up things that made him feel uncomfortable, which I think is extremely unfair and highlights the stigma about mental health, because he would sit there talking about his gastric bypass surgery. Like, I'm not squeamish myself, but maybe someone else doesn't want to hear that while they're eating their lunch. But apparently, me talking about depression makes them uncomfortable. So people kept going. It felt like I was in school again, and people were telling the supervisor the things I was doing, and I was getting called to her office. Um, by November, I was pretty unhappy there, and unfortunately, I went to call my psychiatrist to make an appointment. The mood swings were getting bad, and I was like crying at a bus stop at 6 p.m., and then 11 p.m., I'm bouncing off my bedroom wall. And I sort of knew, I'm like, I'm going to slip into a major depressive episode. I could sort of feel where this was going. So I called the psychiatrist's office, and they're like, yeah, Dr. So-and-so doesn't work in this clinic anymore. You have to go back to your family doctor and get a referral for someone else in the clinic. He was peed off, to say the least. He's been practicing like 40 years, this guy. My family doctor's ancient. And he was like, this isn't proper practice. They should give you to a different doctor in the clinic, blah, blah, blah. So he gave me the referral, and they called me back with an appointment date in late February. Unfortunately, the wait times have actually gotten substantially worse since then. So I guess I got lucky. But yeah, so I didn't have an appointment till late February. And meanwhile, I'm going stupid now. And the reason I ultimately ended up, I actually don't remember it in exacting detail, although I probably have it written down somewhere. So if I find, I'm just thinking, 'cause I probably have it written down somewhere. So I'm wondering, I'm going to keep talking, and I'm going to see if I have this written down in my documents here. So I quit on December the 9th, 2015. I left this job. That was the day of the Christmas concert. I kind of left them high and dry. And let me see, I know this is unconventional here. Okay, it's probably in this document. I'm weird like this. I guess this is probably a very autistic behavior. Now Word's acting up. It's going to take forever to open. I'm sure this is a very autistic behavior. I'm always keeping records and lists and details. I'd like to just basically read what's in this document and wrap up the video, if the thing wants to open. So what I will let you know is after I left the job, sorry this video is coming across more disorganized than it was supposed to. After I left the job, I ended up having to move back home because it took me so long to see the psychiatrist. I was completely out of it. I was staying up to 7 in the morning, eating cake for dinner. I was totally out of it. I couldn't work in that state, and without a job, I couldn't pay my rent. So I had to move back home. And this is something I actually plan to take to my local member of parliament, or actually, no, I should remember provincial parliament, because healthcare is provincial. I don't know why I haven't done this yet. I'd actually like to tell somebody that I had to leave a job in an apartment because it took so long to get to a psychiatrist. And when I actually got to her, she made like 2 adjustments to my meds, and within a few weeks I was fine. So here we go. I think it might be finally opening. Alright. Okay. I'm gonna read this. This is what happened when I quit that job. So it says here, after a couple of months, I started getting stressed and having mood swings. The other school-age staff did not know about my diagnoses. Well, they knew about, that's not entirely true, I digress that. And were starting to increase their expectations of me. However, it was a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. I don't really know if work made me stressed out and led to mental health problems, or mental health problems were causing me to be stressed at work. My anxiety and depression continued to worsen, and what? Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna read this to you and then wrap up the video. So I mentioned above that I was having mood swings. From day to day and even hour to hour, my mood would change drastically. On Monday, December 7th, I woke up and went to work feeling fine. That day, we made a bit of a change. Our program had 4 rooms of school-age children. On Mondays, we had about a third less children because the school offered after-school language class. On Mondays, we had the kids in different rooms, and on this day, it was brought up that the numbers were really uneven. One room had 10 kids and another had 30, so we agreed to move kids around. My room had low numbers, so we were given more kids. However, we were given a really bad combination of kids, and my room partner and me couldn't handle it. I asked to go to a different room and was told no. My room partner spoke to the supervisor at the end of the day, and she agreed those kids should not have been together, and she would come and talk to us on Wednesday. On Wednesday, December 9th, we had the meeting. I expected it to be 10 minutes at the most. Instead, it turned into an hour-long session of people pointing fingers and saying that we weren't working together as a team. I didn't understand what was going on, and that made me very anxious. It just seemed like everyone was mad, and I didn't know why. I had thought everything was going fine. I tried taking a breather before the kids got out of class, but I never really calmed down. I spoke to the supervisor at the end of the day, who basically told me nothing was wrong and I was just repeating myself. I went home and was anxious all evening. I went into work the next day, and that was the day I quit. This was the day of our Christmas concert. When I went in, I discovered that the schedule was slightly different, so people could have longer lunches since they would be working an extra hour. That threw me a bit because I didn't know about it in advance. At 2:30 that day, I went to the resource room, the school age where I did my program planning, to work on some observations. The room was never empty, but it was always quiet because it was treated as a workspace. However, that day it was full of people running around getting things ready for the concert. I got really upset because there was nowhere quiet for me to work, and the other staff didn't seem to understand why I was upset. So if you're following from an autistic person's point of view, the day is already thrown off. I need my space. The normally quiet space is in chaos. Plus, I'm still confused about what happened the previous few days because of my communication issues. So, the other staff didn't seem to understand why I was upset. I lost it a little and started lecturing the staff. Most of the school-age staff were in one room, so I wrongly decided to take that opportunity to tell them what they weren't getting about me. The assistant supervisor happened to walk by. She pulled me out and took me to the office and asked why I was attacking the staff. I burst into tears and said the job was too hard for me. She told me to take a breather because there was only 10 minutes until the kids got out. I went outside for quiet time, but there was gym class outside screaming. So I had to go back in at 3:30 without finding a quiet space. Then 2 things happened that broke the camel's back. I was walking down the hallway to my room, and my room partner passed me and said I was going to be alone in the room that day because she and other staff were going to take children outside. I asked if it was possible for me to go outside instead. She said she was fine with it, but to run it by the other staff member. The other staff member said no. She said I couldn't handle it if one of our children with ADHD ran off. I didn't have time in the middle of the hallway to explain that I have special needs experience and that my sensory issues made going outside a better choice that day. I walked off to start wiping the tables for snack in my room. When I got there, a child with special needs started hitting and insulting me. He had been doing this for days, and the other staff were telling me to just ignore him. That day, I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed a bottle of disinfectant down on the counter and burst into tears. So, this child I'm mentioning here had some major behavioral issues, and nobody would tell me what his diagnosis was. I remember trying to ask questions, and they would give me smart aleck responses, and I was just supposed to deal with this kid. The assistant supervisor walked by again, and I told her I didn't care if I was fired. She took me to the office, and I asked if I was fired. The supervisor said no, so I quit, put on my coat, walked out the door, and got on the bus. The supervisor attempted to extend an olive branch. She was willing to take me back as a supply. I even went in and had a meeting about it, and I ended up emailing them from a hospital emergency room. I forgot about this, saying that I couldn't work because of my mental health. So I hope you can follow that. You can see what was happening at work that made it very difficult for a person on the spectrum. Communication needs to be clear and direct. I can definitely, and I expect adults on the spectrum or as high functioning as me to take some responsibility, try and make notes and do things on your own as much as you can. But the staff need to understand. I'm not saying they have to repeat everything and baby me and go out of their way. You just have to don't spring things on me. Tell me things clearly. If there's a problem, tell me. And they weren't getting it. They clearly had no understanding of my sensory challenges. You know, you can see from that the story of what happened when I finally quit. They weren't really understanding my needs. I know the supervisor held a meeting um, with them to talk about my Asperger's and would not include me in the meeting. So I have no idea what she said about me, if it was accurate. So to me, this story is the epitome of Asperger's challenges in the workplace. And if I take a permanent job again down the road, which I'm sure I will, everything has to be laid out. This is what I have. And I want to emphasize that I'm a perfectly competent employee. You know, these are my diagnoses, but this is what I'm good at. This is what I can do, and we will work together well. And these are a few things that might help me. As an adult, I'm not going to sit down and say, you must do this, this, and that, or I will fail. I'm not 10 years old. And mostly responsibility is on me, but I just need the employer and other staff to know here's a few things that can help. And this is what I should have done when I started at this place. Maybe I would still be employed there. Maybe my life, maybe not. Maybe I'd still be sitting in my parents' basement right now. I don't know. But yeah, so there's my story. There's the epitome of Asperger's in the workplace. So this turned out long, but I don't really care. It needed saying. So there it is. Thank you.